Okay, so welcome everyone to another Fida worldwide talk, or I don't know, in America they may say Fida, but we've got we're lucky here today to have Patrick Vell. Well, I know him as Pat Vell, but Patrick Vell to the rest of you, and it's great to have him here today. And he recently, I think he's still got his exhibition on at Paul Smith, which
Yep.
is great to see. And I think this is your second show of Paul Smith, if that's
Yeah,
right.
we did a show in New York at his store in New York, but it was kind of COVID time, so it was like we all know, it was a bit of a strange time.
A weird
And yeah, so this one is at London in Mayfair on Albemarle, and he's actually got the front room, the front space is a gallery. They don't have any product in there, or clothing products anyway. So it's a great space, great store. It's beautifully kind of fitted and very interesting kind of what am I trying to say? He's linked two buildings together. So it almost feels like a bit of a maze. You have it's quite unique. I don't know if you've
I
been.
think all Paul Smith stores are like that.
Well, it matches his personality.
They're all quirky and edgy and twisted and tons of art and stuff like that. I guess what would be because I've made as I said, I did a little presentation of some of your work, and what would be good is we like to kind of get a little introduction about your initial journey into what you do, how you got there, and sort of where you are now.
Yeah.
Not at super speed, but because your
No,
journey's been quite long, but it'd be
the,
nice to just see how you got there, learnings and go from there, and the sketchbooks and
Yeah. All right. So, quick version of events. I mean, from an early age, I was always drawing, and I think it was clear that I had a natural ability. I think it's okay to say that. And so I kind of knew at an early age that I would do what I'm doing. However, it doesn't just happen overnight, right? So I did go to art school. Well, kind of. I got asked to leave the first one. I scraped through art school, really. And then when I finished, I moved to London. So I grew up in Bristol, and then I moved to London at 19 and left college. And then it's like, no, I was lucky. So during college, I was picking up the odd illustration commission. Like back then, there was still a thriving magazine industry. Like I remember I did quite a few drawings for Sleaze Nation for like 100 quid, 200 quid, but which I thought was awesome at the time. And so I was lucky that I was picking up little commissions even when I was at college. And then I remember I sold a lot of the original work. I sold quite a lot to collectors at the show, and then left college. And then I didn't just jump into that to illustration immediately. What did I do? Worked in a pub for years, but I was still getting little, jobs. And then I got into that's right. I did a postgrad diploma in drawn animation, like character animation. My mum thought that what did she say? I think it'd be good for you to, have another string to your bow. And she was completely right. I hated it. I knew immediately that I didn't want to animate. I wanted to be the one who did the drawings, not work with someone else's drawings and designs. However, she was right. It unlocked a lot of other opportunities. I ended up then teaching animation at the Design Museum on the weekends, which paid pretty well. And that kind of gave me enough money to survive in London and still make my other work. And then that actually got me into a job at the BBC. So it's funny how these things work out. And then I had a kind of a small career at the BBC, where I was actually teaching creative stuff. Basically, back then the BBC had a department called the 21st Century Classroom, and they had a beautiful, fully kitted out digitally classroom it wasn't at Television Centre, but it was at White City. And we basically our remit was to enrich the curriculum and learning with kind of technology. How do you use technology in schools creatively? So we would teach teachers, and also every day we'd have school groups in. So I kind of traveled all over the UK for 3 or 4 years, kind of leading that creatively. So that was brilliant. And then at the same time, I was just picking up that then allowed me to that's right. I could then afford to rent a desk in a shared studio in Shoreditch, and it was called Big Orange Studio. And back then, even before then, there was quite a few well-known illustrators shared this space, and I got a desk in there. So I would I would work at the BBC, and then I started to get bigger and bigger commissions quite regularly. So I kind of did both of those things for a while. I'd go to the studio in the evenings and on the weekends. And then there came a natural point where I had to decide whether to stay at the BBC or just kind of make the leap. And by then, I decided to kind of leave the BBC and just concentrate on the drawing. And by then, through the network of the studio and just kind of being around them, and also the Association of Illustrators shared they at the corner of the space. I kind of met agents, and it was then quite straightforward for me to get an agent as soon as I left. So then that's kind of started the kind of illustration part of my career, I guess. And then what happened over the years, I guess people know me or have known me mainly for kind of drawing the cityscape. And over the years, I've had a couple of milestone projects where I've had, short films I've made go viral on what was then before TikTok and even before Instagram. Actually, it was like YouTube, I think. And I've had a couple of milestone moments, and they were drawings of New York that I did. And those drawings definitely acted as kind of catalysts to, get me some other lovely projects and move me forward, I guess. I then kind of, I guess with what I did back then or do now is the cityscape drawings, there is a use for them commercially. So I was able to, work with brands and in a lot of real estate projects and with a number of clients, but also people enjoyed them just as, pieces of art. So I managed to kind of, what am I trying to say? Be in a couple of worlds at the same time. And these days, I think I decided New York was always a city, like for a lot of artists or creative people or people in general, it was, it was somewhere over the years I always loved to draw. And when the films went viral, I think it just made sense to me to actually come and move here. So off the back of those films and also some kind of quite high profile projects, I got a visa and came over here nearly 10 years ago. So here I am. These days I kind of continued that journey really. Like I still work commercially, although maybe not so much in the kind of more traditional illustration world. But I've started to work a lot more in, I guess, the fine art world. I've had a couple of big shows this year, and pre-COVID I was in a position where commercially I could be quite selective as to what I took on. And now I'm not as selective, but no, it's, what am I trying to say? Yeah, no, it's been a really good move moving over here for the most part. Sorry, I was rambling.
No, it's good because the last time, well, I've been to New York probably last year we had a show at the National Arts Club.
Yeah.
And then before that, I was in New York working with similar to you. I'd worked on a job for I guess it was a real estate job. And one thing I noticed in New York, which I preferred from everywhere else, they love drawing. They love it. And everyone says the UK loves it. trust me, all the Americans appreciate, respect illustrators, art creatives. They have a different sort of understanding for you, and they see you as part of the process, not as you as a cheap option.
Yeah.
That's how I always felt when I spoke to Americans or worked on US jobs. They were like, no, you know, we love what you, they really see illustration and drawing as a real part of the process, rather than in the Britain, it's like, we can't afford photography, so we went with an illustrator. And that's the main thing I used to hear, is this is why we've got illustrators. And this would be, many magazines would tell me why they used illustrators. And it was quite sad to hear that. So America was, you know, the perfect place for you, for me, and
Yeah.
lots of artists. And I think most of my work is US based anyway. So
Yeah.
it's quite a great space for me to be. And I don't know, whenever I go there, I'm just like, this is so good. It just feels great. And, you know, just seeing what you've done has been great to see, because, you know, we worked on a similar project.
Yeah, I was thinking
at
about
the
that.
Andes.
It was that hotel in Liverpool Street.
Yeah. So you had one room, I had another, and it was an interesting project. And I guess for me, I remember what yours did, and you cleverly collaborated with Paul Davis, who I was a massive fan of, and
Yeah.
you know, he was sharing studios with you. And Paul Davis, I went to Japan with Paul Davis. I don't know if he told you, but I went to Japan with him, and the reason why I liked him is because he's anti everything.
Yeah.
And he's very punk rock and roll of art, illustration, and only the true grit of the art, creative illustration world really appreciates and respects someone who's willing to just do something bad.
Yeah.
And I remember when he did his first window we were in Osaka, and they wanted to throw him out because he was writing. I think he had Marc Jacobs was his brand, and I had NARS or something, and he did Why Marc Jacobs Poisons You as the promotional piece on the window. And I just thought, that's so put. And all these Japanese people were like, oh my God, you can't do that, you can't do that. And he was like, yeah. And then he just said, I don't agree with anything to do with this. So I'm just going to draw people looking at me. So when they were looking at him in the window, he was actually drawing them.
Oh, that's great.
He's just that person who's just like a genius. He's a genius. And I think that's the only way I can describe him, as a genius of the drawing world. And anyone who loves his work and seen his work and his sort of rawness. And I can see how he's maybe inspired you a little bit to bring in a little bit of the rebel into your work, and bring probably a bit of a stripped back version of yourself, which is nice. So
yeah, and I really enjoy working with him. I don't work with collaborate in that way that often, but it was an easy. Well, the way he said, so I would obviously I'd look at the kind of the locations. We've done a few projects, but I would make a world for his characters to
live,
to sit on top of, or the way I see it is I allow him to vandalize my work.
Yes, I think that's the best way to put it. And it adds a little, it's a bit like Warhol and Basquiat. And I think it's sort of one makes one and then the other one sort of destroys it, but makes it better.
100%.
It brings back a little bit of punch. So I think it's kind of a nice partnership, this sort of battle, which is quite good. Anyway, let me get, so I made a quick little presentation of some of your pieces. So
yeah,
I'm just going to bring it up here. So hopefully you can see that. Well, the image hasn't popped up. Maybe my internet's running slow. But I had a nice image here of your sketchbooks, and just I guess to talk about your sketchbooks in a quite a cool way.
When I moved to America, I thought to myself, people know me for the architectural and cityscape drawings, and I felt whenever I drew people, they felt clumsy to me, and I wanted to improve. So I just, it was very simple. I just thought, well, how can I get better at drawing people. Well, I have to draw thousands of them, and how can I do that without impacting on time in the studio? I was like, well, I have to draw when I'm not in the studio. So I just started filling small sketchbooks whenever I traveled. So whenever I get on the subway, or whenever I'm outside, I have a small book in my pocket, and I just started drawing, and now I've got 10 years worth of sketchbooks, and certainly I've improved, that's for sure. And also, I think there's nothing beats drawing on the spot. It's a real I've noticed there's a direct relationship between just generally my drawing improving. The more you do, the better you get. It's very simple. And often, you'll know when you work commercially, you often don't have the time, or you get given reference, or you work from screens and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'd love to get out there and draw on the spot, and then bring that back to the studio, at least as a starting point for stuff. And that's what I did in Paul Smith. I drew 2 views from New York and London, both on the river. So in London, I was on Waterloo Bridge, and then here I just lived near the East River here, so I kind of drew down on the East River, and that became the starting point of the body of work that I made at those 2 shows. So yeah, sketchbooks if the studio was burning down, they would be the first thing that I rescued, put it that way.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's great, because I guess for me, sketchbooks have a multiple series of roles, from note taking to drawing. And I remember when I did my MA, surprising enough, I went on to do an MA at the RCA, and they really honed in on respecting your sketchbook, like having a sort of love affair with a sketchbook, where usually it was, well, I noticed when I did my degree as well, when I did my degree at Kingston, and a lot of them were RCA alumni, or they taught at the RCA. So they had a very sort of a drilling in your head about the role of a sketchbook and how you should appreciate it. And I see with you, especially with sketchbooks, the drawings in there are as good as what would go on a piece of paper if it was an expensive piece of paper. So there's I can see a real sort of bond happening. And, and I still have my sketchbooks, which I stick stuff in and play with and do typography or whatever I'm doing, and sort of semi-destroying and drawing in. And I think it's nice to see how you've sort of kept this, on holiday drawing, I'd be the same. And then I think your journey with the sketchbook has been, and I think a good thing that maybe happened to you is getting chucked out of school, getting thrown out of college, because it's kept you doing what you want to do without a sort of academic, like a crow sitting on your shoulder thinking academically. You're just raw, going for it, and I think you step back to that. I think it's really nice to see the sketchbooks. And
I obsessively kept sketchbooks in college. I went to St Martin's to do my degree, and it was good, but it wasn't a, you'll know this, it wasn't like Kingston or Brighton. It wasn't a drawing focused course. I did graphic design, and it was very conceptual. And I was probably, out of, let's say 40 took the illustration path. It was me and actually Chantal Martin. She's moved here. She's a very successful, she's done brilliantly for herself. We were the only drawers, really. And it was, it's funny. I remember I had a great tutor called Andrew, and I remember, so I never really used to answer the brief properly, and I would come in and unfurl these huge cityscapes, and everyone would go, whoa. And of course I guess I was showing off in a way, but Andrew once said to me, what did he say? Patrick, you need to stop making work that your grandma would like to put on the wall and answer the brief. And it's funny because he was completely right to try and push me. But I think I was also right to kind of ignore that and just keep doing the thing that I loved, because it did get me to where I am today.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hearing similar things said to me, is because if you're a drawer and you sort of you're learning through draw, like a maker. If you're
Yeah.
a maker like ceramics, you're honing your craft.
Yeah.
You know, if someone said to David Hockney, well, you better stop drawing because you know your grandma might want flowers on their wall or a drawing of a landscape or a forest. Oh, well, that's not interesting. It's not conceptual enough. And I think universities have this moment where they kind of say, well, you know, you need to think further than your drawing
Yeah.
rather than just a drawing. Where I don't know, I think we missed that. And I think maybe that's why the Royal Drawing Schools happened in London.
I'll tell you what, I mean, I've not visited it, but I follow them on Instagram, and the work I see
It's great.
coming out of there is really impressive.
Yeah. I think it's the only school that I could see that really, really pushes drawing as a practice and focuses on it, and would be a place where you would flourish, you know, would flourish, would go there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you. I've kind of just figured it out myself, really. Paul, like my relationship with Paul has been good because he knows, you know, he understands what I do, and he can push me a little bit, or try to push me maybe out of my comfort zones, even if I tell him to bugger off. But like, you know, it's an interesting one because it's thing that's such, you know, you have a very distinct line, and it is my personality, right? So it's a tricky one to, I think, as a teacher, you know, if I take a step back, it's probably quite tricky to guide someone who has a clear kind of personality already. I don't know. My tutor was doing the right thing completely. Like, anyway, and actually I went back and did a talk, and it was one of the first things I said.
What did they say? They must have laughed.
Oh, he thought it was great. Yeah. Because he was completely right. But then I was also right. It's you know, you got to figure it out yourself at the end of the day.
The role of a tutor is to push you, even if it's wrong, is to push you and not make you feel static, that you've just gone there and they're going, no, the goal of you is to fight against me and actually justify why you're doing what you're doing. And you will then push that through. So I guess these are sort of drawings, and this was a drawing at IDO, I think.
I did that years ago. And that was just, I think that their studio was on one of these piers just under this bridge. So I kind of spent a week doing that on the wall. God, that was a long time ago. Yeah. I don't, you know, that was when I was doing murals with a pen, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I know. I watched the time lapse.
The budgets don't, you know, there's quicker ways to do big work that I'm learning.
I guess that it is a trick of how can I get this thing to happen faster, and sort of, I guess, document. There was a company that I remember, because we were thinking about how to incorporate machines more with drawing. Yeah, and there was a company I met called Giotto, who, like a plotter, they could put it on a wall and it would redraw. And I guess you've probably had this.
I've seen, someone sent me a clip of one yesterday. I've seen them, and also what's his name, Peter Blake.
Yeah,
I saw a short film yesterday with him watching one of his drawings come to life, and it's basically like a big printer on the wall, isn't it?
Well, there's the one where it can actually do a full color print, but the one I really like, which I thought was more interesting to me because my dad had one, is it picks up a pen and it draws with the pen.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So there's a company, I think they were called Giotto, and I met them, and I was going to do a talk with them at Tate Britain about the future of drawing, and then they said, oh, we've got this other machine that draws on the wall. I can't remember if it was called Parrot or something, but the overall company was called Giotto, and they were a startup, and they were showing me all these things, and I was like, wow. And the goal was that they had a thing where you could send a text, and then it would write the message to your family on the wall. So you could write a little message and then it rubs it, and then it could rub it out. And then it writes these like live texts on the wall with a pen. And then I'd said, oh, they must be able to do drawings. And then they were like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, well, you could do a mural. And I'm thinking about you drawing on wall, because it was during the, like just after I did the Andas as well. And I thought, wait a minute, this could be an interesting factor.
Right.
But I guess watching you going through the pain of drawing on the wall is half of the process.
Well, yeah, 100%. And pain is a good word, especially as you get older, because like I've done some bigger scale projects, and it hurts your body. It's a physical thing too. But I think, look, there's what this drawing here on that wall. I was making that drawing up on the wall, right? There was no prep work. There was no thinking or a design. These days, if I was doing a mural, I would finish that drawing small scale. Therefore, when I was on the wall, all the decisions would be made. At that point, I'm just transferring.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
And scaling up.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And I've done a couple of these now. I did a wall up in Queens at Long Island City. Huge piece. It was, and I did it all with Posca pens. And I really loved that piece, but it never even, I don't think anyone ever saw it, because the building got flipped like 3 times. And then the 3rd or 4th person that bought the building decided to do away with this wall internally that the mural was on. And they asked me about if I knew about preserving, and I don't actually know what happened to it, but that's what happens when you do murals. I mean, it's one of the things.
Yeah, I think I saw, was it the one with the orange in it? And
yes.
Yeah, so I saw you sort of crying that it was going to be destroyed, and you're seeing your last moments of a mural, and it was a great one. I guess the nice thing is you had lots of prep work for it. I saw lots of prep work, sketches, research. There's sort of a documentary process to these big pieces.
Yeah, but look, you have to do these things to learn. I learned so much, and I don't, when there's an opportunity to do something at that scale, even if the budget doesn't, isn't great. If I haven't done something like that before, I'll probably do it just so I can learn myself.
Yeah, that's an interesting, I guess, factor is sort of shape shifting, even if the budget isn't there, is sometimes, as a commercial creative, you're trying to survive and earn money to live and pay rent, and then the next part is, how do I keep extending what I'm doing so I learn, I grow, and shift? And I think that's become sort of part of your process. And then I guess you've got these sort of baseball guys, but I know you did a partnership which led to an exhibition with was it the Cubs?
So it's I've got a relationship with a baseball player at the Cubs, a guy called Ian Happ. He got in touch with me probably about 5 years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago now, initially because he wanted me to commission me to do a big canvas for him for his apartment. And then that kind of he's a great guy, and that kind of got pushed to the side, and I ended up kind of going, he had this idea to, so Wrigley Field, where the Cubs play, it's a bit like Lord's cricket ground back home, in that it's like a bucket list. Any cricket fan would want to go and watch a game at Lord's cricket ground just because it's this iconic stadium, right? And Wrigley Field, where the Cubs play, is the same here. So if you're a baseball fan, you want to go and watch a baseball game at Wrigley Field in Chicago, because it's still a neighborhood. You can sit in the bleachers in the stand and see through to someone's house through their living room window. It's still in the neighborhood, and that's unique in this country. I think the Red Sox in Boston has the same thing, but most other stadium here you drive to the edge of the town and it's a concrete bowl kind of thing, whereas this is still, wooden seating, and it is really stunning, actually. And so he said he has these moments during games where he he kind of looks out and he's like, what I'm seeing is incredible. And I wish there was a way for the fans to see what I'm seeing. So he came up with this idea whilst I think I went to a, that's right. We were talking about me doing a big Chicago piece for him. And then I went to my first baseball game here at the Mets. And I just did a quick sketch in, you know, I'm always drawing. So I did a sketch in my sketchbook, put it on Instagram, and then he saw it, was like, hey, Pat, I've had this other idea. Let's park the canvas idea. Can you get out to Wrigley? So within a week, I was up in Chicago. And he basically walked me around his positions on the field where they play. And was like, do you reckon you could draw what I see during games? So we kind of, it's like, in my head, I was like, no, but then I said yes, and we'll work it out. And yeah, we did these 3 drawings, huge line drawings, and he was very much kind of, you know, it was his vision. I was just a kind of drawer, and we released prints of that. We raised a lot of money for his charities, and then that kind of morphed into a gallery exhibition that we had this last summer, where I kind of continued that exploration. It was more about the club and the fans and then the city. So me exploring the city through the lens of, you know, baseball and the Chicago Cubs and what it means to people. So yeah, that was, and I'm sure there'll be more stuff coming up. That was really great. And it was really lovely to be, what's really lovely about this relationship is that it's just me and Ian. There isn't a brand or the club. I mean, the club kind of, you know, they push it certain ways, but they're not kind of, there's no money in terms of, there isn't a brand, you know, fronting the money, or it's just a relationship between me and Ian and creatively.
Yeah.
And that's been really unique and special, actually, because you'll know, you know, a lot of the time, and not to, I love working commercially, but this was just us figuring it out. And then we got a gallery involved with Victor, who runs the Gallery Victor in Chicago, and he's wonderful. And we just kind of shaped it between us. Yeah, that's been really cool. Really cool.
And I've put these cityscapes beside it, I guess, is from a New York perspective. Because, you know, looking at these cityscapes, looking at the buildings, I guess a little bit what you're known for.
Yeah.
And what kind of set you off on your journey, which you were talking about earlier, and placing yourself. I guess the quite nice part between the two is choosing what to leave out and choosing what to leave in. And I guess that's quite an interesting factor.
Yeah, I mean, you'll know, yeah. And that's something that to this day, I have to kind of I have to learn to restrain myself, because I can keep going and going and going and going. So actually, yeah, yeah, that's something I'm still working on.
which is great. And I find that, you know, sort of fascinating. And then, you know, I've got the sketchbooks, and then there's this, your sort of mural with you and Paul, and then this sort of middle piece. So sort of moving from sketchbooks to murals to then paintings, this sort of middle piece, which led on to lots of bits and bobs came from this, because
so well, actually,
iPad as well.
This middle piece, the story is that I was actually, so I've got kind of an ongoing, I've done a lot of projects with Apple over the years, and so I was actually in LA working on a project, and I sat in the garden of my Airbnb each night, and I made a drawing like this of this view, but I did it on the iPad, because I think I had a studio in LA at the time, and I just worked on the iPad. So I would sit there and draw on the iPad each evening, and I started experimenting just with these bright colors. And my intention was to then use that drawing to make an actual painting, or a big kind of colorful drawing on paper. And so, but then what happened was Apple then really loved the painting I did on the iPad, and ended up licensing it and that kind of got installed in every store in the world and on billboards and stuff. And that kind of was another big milestone project for me, I think. And this piece seemed to was very popular with people. But then finally, during COVID, I actually kind of made this actual piece from the iPad piece that I did whenever it was, 4 or 5 years, 6 years ago. So yeah, it's funny. I work digitally to then kind of work and on paper.
I guess the shift from a bit of line drawing to then total color, because I noticed that sometimes you're working black and white, and that is for myself as well. And then the iPad, you feel like you can only use color. It's like because it's, I guess, the mess. You're not going to run out of pens, paint, and you're like, right, bang, color.
I've learned so much from the iPad about color, and also you can change it immediately, and you're not. I just feel like it's funny. I just free up in it when I'm working with color and paint, and also you don't have to mix paint and not waste time, but like you can just get on with it. I love that.
Yeah. I think I think when you first did the iPad drawings, because I was touching into the iPad as well, and it's funny, I was speaking to Apple because they gave me the prototypes to their pen.
Yeah.
And I was testing the pen on the iPad, and I was like, how the hell's this thing going to work? And trying to see how it worked in your hand, and should it be more like a pencil? And then, I was kind of more painterly, and then I kind of went back, and then you did yours, and I was like, how did he stitch I think, I don't know if you remember, I asked you how you made it so big and to print, because my biggest issue was it was the beginning of Procreate,
right?
And the big problem was you could only go so many layers, and then you went mega, and I was like, right, he's obviously got super information here of how to stitch this thing together.
I don't think I did. I think I told you I just worked in. I just worked in like lots of documents and then photoshopped it, I think.
Yeah.
But funny you say that. So the first thing I did for Apple was when the Apple iPad came out with the pencil, the first one, and I got a phone call on I remember it was like a Sunday morning, and the agency were really sketchy about they couldn't tell me what it was really for, but they said, they gave me some vague kind of guidelines, and then asked for can you give us a cost, and can you be in LA on Wednesday or whatever it was? So I kind of went along with it, said yes. But long story short, I got to LA, we got to this hotel. They'd basically driven. We got told to go up to a hotel room, and there was me, an artist called James Jean. I can't remember this chap's name, but he's a wonderful artist from Japan, kind of an older man, and he does these beautiful big ink typography drawings on the floor, but huge ones. And a guy called Jake Weidman. We were all known for traditional mark making, I guess. Anyway, we went into this room, and they'd driven down an actual safe, like a bank safe, and we all had to surrender our phones, and they kind of then opened the safe and pulled out the iPad with the pencil. And then basically for the next 2 or 3 days, I had to sit in a suite, like I had a big room in this hotel. I had to kind of, try and make a drawing with it. And I had a security guy sat in my room with me. But to what you were saying, I didn't quite know, it was really nerve-wracking. I was like, shit, I've got to make a drawing that looks good in 2 or 3 days because I'm going to be on an advert. I was worried about, am I going to break the screen? Am I going to break the pencil? I didn't quite understand how to actually work it. So it took a while. Now I don't care, now I don't care, and it's second nature. But at the time, it was really nerve-wracking.
I think I think I went to Mao, which I think was a secret cut. I remember going for a meeting, and they phones and everything, and then went into a room, and it was a similar journey. And then I can't remember what happened. And then they just said, "Oh, I think we're doing something in America." So you were probably in the States while I
Yeah.
was doing something in the UK, and they were trying to navigate who was going to do what, how it was going to happen, and it was sort of like underground chaos.
Yes.
That's how I felt, because I was like, "What is this? Is a place that I don't even know." I went into this building that didn't exist, and it just felt really surreal. And they said, "Okay, we just need your hand and your arm moving,
Yeah.
and are you okay with that?" And then I was like, "Okay," and it was probably similar to you, and it was just weird. The whole experience was strange, but obviously they're bringing out something hardcore, which is game changing,
Yeah.
and we're in part of that journey. So when I saw this, I was like, "That's Pat's done a great one here," and then I guess next is a bit of a like moving on, a collab from a mate to a celebrity.
Yeah.
This was a great little book. I remember this book coming out.
Yeah. This was with Bjorn Ulvaeus from Abba, and that was a fun and quirky project that we put together in 3 or 4 weeks, really, kind of out of the blue. But and that is funny, like, you never know where things will. So this came as a direct result of me drawing people on the subway, pretty much. So often, because Ricard, who's a lovely chap, he at the time he was doing a lot of creative direction for Bjorn, and he had this idea for the book, and he said he was looking for weeks to try and find someone who could draw it's almost on the spot, or make it look like it's spontaneous. And I'm glad he didn't see your stuff before me, actually. But he yeah, and then he saw one of my subway drawings, and then sent me an email, and then within a week Bjorn was in my studio. It's crazy. So you never know where things come from or why. And that was just because I kind of got into the discipline of making drawings whenever I left the apartment and on the subways. And yeah, so you just never know. But it was a wonderful project.
Yeah.
I mean, when you work this quickly, we did a whole book in 4 weeks, pretty much.
Wow.
And pretty much most of it in a week in Stockholm. There's some spreads that I don't love, but that's just what happens when you get one shot at each one, and then you have to move on to the next one. But what was cool was that Bjorn kind of came up with 40, or I can't remember, maybe 50 odd memories or moments from his life, and he just kind of wrote them in. Each one was a spread, so sometimes the copy would be on one page, sometimes it went across the two, and I would literally just respond to that writing, and physically as well, I could kind of play with it. Yeah. And that was pretty cool. Some people wouldn't be as open to that. He was very kind of saw it as a collaboration as much as telling his story. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I did one with I think his family were billionaires, and his name was Tim Nye, and he owned a gallery. I think it might have been the Ferris Gallery. He kind of, where Ed Ruscha and all the big artists were in the beginning in LA. He took it over, and he worked with all these sort of crazy artists of the time who became huge. Ed Ruscha, and then he wanted me to help do a documentary book of his life, and his life was hardcore, drugs, right, rock and roll, and it was about him and his dog causing hell, and it actually didn't get published in the end, and we'd spent a year thinking.
Oh, no way!
I must have 5,000 drawings of working with him, and he came to my house, and I went to New York, and blah, blah, blah. And it was such a shame, because some of the drawings are, I love them, and they're great. And I'm like, I'd keep that for myself. And some of the, you get, and also just pacing yourself, learning how to draw. And I'm not a graphic novel artist, so he really loved graphic novels, but he wanted someone a bit artier than a graphic novel illustrator. Yeah. So but it was it was a great experience. It was interesting to meet him. You meet these fascinating people, and I guess Abba would be you're kind of guaranteed for it to go through. Where I think we had like 6 publishers, and then his story. He was with Mary Boone. He knew he took me around where he was going, and we did some great street drawings. And he worked with all these Milton, not Milton Glaser, but Milton something. I can't remember his name, but he was talking about these artists who did, and he was showing me like old pairs of shoes he got from the ice, who was sort of working alongside Jackson Pollock. Amazing people, but I guess like you, it just sort of happened. So then you kind of this is sort of happening. This is where we are now, the Paul Smith sort of world. And your show that's happening, and we were just talking about framing like before, and putting on a show. I guess that's kind of an interesting fact, is as a commercial person is making these things still happen and having the energy to do it.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's, if I'm honest, the most of the work for this show I did in about 8 weeks to 9 weeks. So,
wow,
it was a lot to put it together. And I wish I could dedicate a whole year to it. It'd be awesome. It'd be brilliant. And maybe in 10 years I'll be able to do that. But you have to kind of, as someone who's come up in the commercial world, that's how you make your money. So you have to kind of try and do everything. It's tricky. It's tricky. But what is good is because I guess I draw quickly anyway, but when you work commercially, you know how to make work quickly. So you can, if you're confident, you can just go for it. And, you learn that you don't have to completely fill the space. There's ways to have focal points, and then you can draw on walls and tell a story that way. So I just say yes to things that make me feel a bit scared. And then, I think I've learned over the years that it's not make or break, and some great things will happen from it, some things won't be as successful, but that's all part of it, and you just learn. I think, and also actually at the Paul Smith show I've got all my sketchbooks, and that's also was the thing that Paul Smith saw that got me, he became interested in my work. It was because of the sketchbooks. I think obviously he appreciated the city stuff and the bigger stuff I do, but he just really, as someone, he's very inquisitive himself. And, we were talking earlier on, like I used to go into his Floral Street shop when I was a student. I couldn't afford anything in there. So I wasn't there. I was looking at clothes, but I was more interested in the cool stuff that was there. It was kind of like being in a museum or a Aladdin's cave of, I don't know, curiosities and trinkets. And I don't know, I just loved being in those spaces and exploring. And it was kind of like a maze that you would take yourself around, and there was always great art on the walls and amazing jewelry and just cool objects and things. And that, maybe I love looking at things and exploring them with line. And he was literally drawn to my sketchbook, so that's what got me in. That's what started the relationship with Paul. Anyway, so I think when you think about it, when I put on the show, that kind of, the sketchbook work can become, what am I trying to say, what's great about having 10 years worth of sketchbooks now is that I have an archive of characters and moments that I can pull out and make bigger, and fill in holes and have them working around maybe kind of the more bigger pieces that I've done.
They're like little encyclopedic references, which I think are fascinating. I wanted to stick this one in because I went to New York, and I was in New York, and I think it just come out, and I was like, this is lovely. And it's not, everybody's competitive, and we all like go, wow. And we're all like, well done, Pat. And it's like a pat on the back. And I think I went to Brooklyn, and I think I went to see it there. Was that in the Brooklyn store?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was most stores, I think, in the world. But Yeah, there was that was it. That was the one in Williamsburg. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the one I went to see, and I was, um, it was just, I guess it was sort of a nice movement away from your other stuff, and it
Yeah.
rich, just color, deep, and I saw different variations, um, and I just thought, this is a real departure and a sort of a move into a new sort of space and
I'd
large
love to,
format as well, which was great.
should get back to LA.
Yeah, but it's the color, and I remember when I was working, I did some work with Tom Ford, and they always said the light in New York is the best color. You'll get like they said the crispest and most authentic color is in New York. That's what he said. They used to go to New York just to look at swatches of fabrics.
Wow.
It was that, yeah. So he would say Britain, you'd have more of a grey vision on stuff, and he said LA gave you a distorted, hyper real. So he said New York, we'd all meet in New York, and we'd get the swatches out for the season to see them. And I was like, oh my God, so flying swatches around just to go and have a meeting. But I guess it's big brands, big budgets, big brands,
Right.
big, or they just wanted to all go to New York. There's probably, they just loved New York and they were like, right, any excuse to go.
Yeah.
And I guess this was, for me, when I saw this, I was like, Pat's sort of landed. And I saw all the other little bits that you did, and the mouse and the into the little hole, and
Oh yeah, that
narrative as well. That was a fun. I didn't put that in, but I thought that was a great. I didn't want to put too many. I didn't want to put animations in because I didn't know if they'll crash or not. But I guess if people, quite a lot of people I know follow you anyway, so they probably would have seen the mouse in the hole in his little cheese, and then the next story, which I think there's a real. That reminded me. Now you're talking about the BBC. I could see that as a BBC piece,
right.
about
I mean that whole thing was using it's that. I mean, there's been a load of though the infinite zoom things. I've seen a load of them online, and there was, I think the people are still doing them and going viral or whatever. And Apple contacted me to do one for an ad for them, but it was using an app called Endless Paper. And I don't know if you've used it. It's basically a note-taking app that has an infinite canvas, but the drawing tools are very rudimentary. It's kind of MS Paint, but and you can't work on layers. There's absolutely no sophistication to it. I don't mean that in a bad way, right? You literally have to, if something's wrong, you have to draw on top of it. So you just make a drawing. Like there's no and that's probably why they asked me to help them with it, because you just had to kind of figure it out. It was really fun though.
It was great. It was great, and I could see an educational side to that. And but I guess this was our last slide. I'm just going to stop sharing for a sec so we can sort of see you. If I can see a few people on here. If they want to chuck some questions in the chat, you more than likely can, because I know Pat's got a busy day. We have to move on. But no, so I guess I'm just trying to think of anything else that we might have missed. Sketchbooks, big work. One of the things which made me laugh, and I thought, now you said the BBC, is what you did during COVID, embracing young people, looking at their work. That was very BBC. And I thought, is this Pat Vell becoming Mr. Tumble, sort of a BBC morning presenter, like not Rolf Harris, but like Tony Hart, little sessions. And I thought they were really good. And
I do like wearing silk cravats.
It was great to see. And I thought, I've got to give this guy credit. He's really drawn in a whole new world. And
I'll be honest, I really enjoy teaching, or like I love drawing. So if I can, inspire other people to try or to do it, or if I can help, then I'm all for it. And I did learn a lot at the BBC, and you had to. Every day I was teaching with a team, obviously, but you know, 30 kids plus 10 teachers or 40 teachers. So I feel like I picked up a lot of skills over the years, and it would be great to have some kind of, I'd love to do more of that, but like, you know, it's hard to find time to, I've got so many kind of, I call them like plates that I'm spinning. There's enough already.
It is, and if you're taking on epic drawing, I guess for me, you know, like doing this as well, it gives you a little bit of time out.
Yeah.
And we, you know, we haven't spoken for a while as well. So it's just like an opportunity just to have a sort of a catch up and talk about what you're doing and sort of share it with others. And it is sort of like when I was watching what you were doing during COVID, I thought it's so, you know, good on you. And for me, I've got 3 kids, and I was like, you know, watch what he's doing, and rather than there's only exercise, there's drawing, there's all these other elements. So it was nice to see someone not taking the sort of, because you see so many people with this very high art approach to life, with shut off, no one's allowed in, and you kind of broke down a few of them barriers. And I really liked your sort of, and I like your sort of relationship with thinking about integrating young people into work and play and being creative and not having any airs and graces, being quite humble. And I really, I love that side. That side to you's been great to see. You know, it's great. I've got a big family, so I'm used to brothers and sisters. So it's really nice to see you kind of integrating all these people and almost having a chat. And I think, you know, with Instagram, you have like little chats with people and answering questions. So it feels like you're passing out all that knowledge as well, which is great for this as well. So, you know, I'm really happy to have you and glad to speak to you again.
It's funny, isn't it? Because most creative people, especially in our world, are usually very solitary and don't like kind of talking about themselves or their work. You know, even to this day, it's like I have moments. I don't know if you're. Hang on, someone's paying me money for a drawing. That's crazy. There's still that kind of thought in my head sometimes. So I think at the BBC, I just learned how to. What am I trying to say? I just became comfortable with leading creative sessions. Really. Yeah. I don't know, but I enjoy it.
And just on a final point, because I've noticed now, your tattoos are increasing.
Oh my God.
Have you illustrated any that are yours on your body?
Yes, I haven't physically done them, but yeah, and they're the ones I don't like.
Right. and because the funny thing is, around my house, I have majority of art or whatever. You know, I've got Shrigley's or whoever, and I've got Paul Davis. And it's funny, it's similar. Like when you look at your own stuff, it kind of annoys you. And then it's sort of refreshing to look at others, you know, look at other work and go, oh, it's really nice. And, you know.
Well, that's why I like, I didn't, there's certain tattoo artists that I just love their stuff, and I'm happy just for them to do their thing. So I'm collecting badges. That's the way I see it.
You're the sketchbook. So
yeah,
when you die, we'll flatten you out. Put you in a sketch, cut all the pages and go, right, here's Pat Fell in skin and a new Pat skin.
I don't know. I tell you what, though, I mean, I've never tried it, but I guess, have you ever thought about what you could do? You know, because I think tattooing, certainly. I mean, Instagram blew up that industry big time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's too late for me now to actually do it, but I really admire it. But like anything, there's some great stuff and there's some terrible stuff, right?
Yeah. And I think there's sort of the tones, and if you want them tones, and I guess you could play with that quite a lot. But anyway, I'm mindful of time, and I like to keep these pretty short. But you know, Pat, thanks for your time, and you know, keep up the great work. And it's great to see you, and it's great to see you pushing and just keep hacking at it. I think that's the major part of it, and going for, you know, these hardcore drawings. I don't think people realize how hardcore they are. And I know they're hardcore. They are hardcore, and you're really sticking to your guns. And I think that's been quite a nice thing to see, and sort of refreshing to see a little journey happening. So, well done, Pat. And,
Thanks,
it's
man.
great to speak to you,
Catch
and thanks for everything, and speak to you soon.
Anytime, mate.
No worries. Cheers, Pat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.